you've got to pick one side or the other of what you're running for. Whoever you identify with the most. And you could let your stance on everything be known, but you need to pick one side or the other. So if you are a politician, you're running for mayor, senator, congressman, governor, or any position where you have to be voted in the office, you usually have to pick one side or the other. There are some independents, but there's mostly people who are independent decide after they've already been elected. I'm an independent. I don't want to be a Republican anymore. I'm just going to say I'm independent because I don't 100% agree with Democrats. So that usually is how that goes. Now, back to Ted Cruz. But first, this message from your local sponsor.
You're listening to a man who's so sexy it's completely ridiculous. Mr. Anthony Scott Dover. Yummy.
Yes, yes, and yes. Okay. Now, what I was about to say about that dick-faced dummy, Ted Cruz, who is an awful jackass, in my opinion, my professional opinion, he's an awful jackass. But anyway, this last speech that I seen Ted Cruz give about, and he's talking about, we do this theater, and the Democrats say that they want to take guns away from everybody. No, they don't say that. They've never said that. They only have said, that I've ever seen, is that we need to make laws that makes it impossible for a person of mental illness, history of mental illness, meaning you've been diagnosed with a mental illness, you've been on medication for a mental illness, and now you're buying an AR-52, an AR-15 or some gun that's very similar to that, and you're going to go to a grocery store to shoot random people like an asshole who's ruining people's and ending people's lives. But Ted Cruz says, now I've gotten together with real legislation. Ted Cruz, first off, you're lying. You don't have any real legislation. You're doing the bidding of your donors. And if you have any donors who are major gun manufacturers, you're going to do what they tell you to do, and you know it. Okay, so we only have to look up Ted Cruz's record as far as presenting legislation that would stop a person with mental illness from buying a gun. He's never presented any legislation or proposed any legislation before. And when he says Democrats want to take guns away from all law-abiding citizens, that's a lie. That's a lie. So if you start out with a lie and then you argue against the lie, you know, you may be able to fool some people. They're thinking, oh no, they want to take guns away from everyone. No, they don't. They just don't want people who are mentally ill being able to shoot up a place. And that's reasonable. Even people, there are a lot of Democrats who have guns too. Have you ever thought of that? There are a lot of Democrats who have guns too, dumbass. They don't want to take guns away from everyone because they want to protect themselves from nut jobs. Okay, from crazy people. There's crazy people who have, think that, I need to stop these Democrats, and they got a gun and they want to shoot Nancy Pelosi and hang Mike Pence and all this kind of crazy stuff. Okay? Crazy people do crazy stuff. And they don't need to be incited by dumb dick faces like Ted Cruz. All right? So he lies. He is an absolute liar. And like I said, he's an embarrassment. This guy is an absolute embarrassment for the people of Texas. Why on earth, of all people, running for Senate, would you vote for a nasty, no good, disgusting piece of filth like Ted Cruz? The man's a jackass. He cares nothing about the people. He's only trying to further his own political career. That's all he's doing. That's why he allowed Donald Trump to say his wife was ugly and still kissed his butt, because he thought, I will further my own political career by licking the butt of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has a lot of followers. Donald Trump has a lot of support. And so Ted Cruz figures, if I lick the man's butt, his followers will support me as well, and they will vote for me when I run for president. And that's the only reason that he exists, is to try to further his career. He is an awful dickface of a human being. He doesn't care about the people of Texas. He not only left town or left the state, but he left the country when the people of Texas were in need of someone in leadership, in a leadership position, to do something about the problems they are having. Can they count on one of their senators? No. Because he's too busy trying to get out of town and leaving his little dog at home for someone else, or leaving that little dog to freeze or something. I don't know. But by the way, people of Texas, you should all get solar panels. Okay? You should all get solar panels. You won't have to worry about an ice storm and losing power. Your heat would still be on. Okay? I'm just saying, you can't count on people like Dickface Cruz. All right? The guy is a horrible piece of trash of a human being, and he's not even a good senator because he doesn't care about you. So I've made my feelings about Mr. Cruz, Senator Cruz, known. But that's for people of Texas and anybody else listening to this podcast. Moving on. Enough about nasty face, dog lips, Mr. Butt Kisser. I know his wife has to be saying, man, I wish I had a real man who would defend me when Donald Trump says I'm ugly, instead of licking his butt. I know his wife has to sit in a room when no one's around and cry and be like, I wish I had a husband who would defend my honor. Don't let somebody say I'm ugly on national TV and then you turn around and lick that person's butt. Oh man, she should divorce him just for that, but she probably not going to, because she likes the power and the money. I don't know his wife, so I could be speaking out of turn, but if she's still with him, I hope if I'd done that, my wife would be like, you're an asshole and I'm leaving you. This guy called me ugly on national TV and you're licking his butt now so you can further your political career? You can't be serious. But moving on, I don't want to talk about that dude anymore. Let's talk about sports a little bit here, because I'm a big sports fan. But the NCAA tournament is moving forward. I think we're down to the Elite Eight by the time you guys hear this. We're down to 8 teams, and none of the what they call the blue bloods. The blue bloods, unless UCLA is a blue blood. They've won more championships in college basketball than anyone else. So March Madness is underway. They did not have a tournament last year. They have a tournament going on right now. And none of the blue bloods have done very well. North Carolina was in the tournament. They lost. Duke didn't make the tournament. And Kentucky had a terrible team this year, so they didn't make the team. But UCLA's there. So, but I have barely watched any tournament because I'm a Carolina fan, and I'm from Ohio, so I root for the Buckeyes, basketball and football. So the Buckeyes had a number 2 seed, and they got beat in the very first game by Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts, not even a traditional university's name. That's a guy's name, Oral Roberts. Oral. Who would name somebody Oral, by the way? I mean, can you see having a little baby and be like, oh, baby Oral? Why would you name a kid Oral? I mean, it don't sound right. It don't sound right at all. Sounds wrong. I would not name my baby Oral. Be like, oh man, especially if it was a girl. Oral? She'd be getting teased by the boys when she gets in high school. They would never stop saying, you know, you gonna give me some oral? You know? So I wouldn't name a little baby Oral, whether it was a boy or a girl, but especially not a girl. But Oral Roberts beat the Buckeyes, and so, you know, I gotta make fun of them a little bit. They've lost 2 now, so they're out of it too. But the Buckeyes are very disappointing. The big news in college sports, though, is not the tournament. It has something to do with the tournament, but what it is the women's tournament. The women, I don't know if it's one female, one lady, or if it's a group, but the women say that the NCAA spent a lot less money on their tournament and taking care and handling the needs of the women than they did on the men's tournament. Now, I would say that sounds about right. And I would say that they should have spent more money on the men's tournament. Reason being is because the men's tournament generates more revenue than the women's tournament. So I know some of you are saying, so what? What difference does that make? They're all human beings. Listen, if I was the NCAA, and I know that those guys are not smart enough to say this, and they're probably not listening to this podcast. If they were, they you know, hear this and be like, yeah, that's a great idea. If I were the NCAA, if I was someone in position to give a press conference and say, this is why this happened, I would tell them, we spent a certain amount of money, a certain percentage of the money that the women's tournament generates on handling the women's tournament. And we've spent a certain percentage of the money that the men's tournament generates. There's a certain amount of money, a certain amount of revenue that the men's tournament generates, and we spent a percentage of that on handling the tournament and everybody therein involved. Players, coaches, trainers, administrators, broadcasters, whoever. And on the women's side, we've done exactly the same thing. We spent a certain percentage of the money that the tournament generates to handle everything that needed to be handled. Now, you might say that we made some mistakes. We could have done this better or that better, but we spent a certain amount, a certain percentage of the money on each tournament that tournament, the revenue that tournament generates. Now that would make the NCAA look like, you know, they're not being chauvinistic, because the women's tournament doesn't generate the same money. So they could get out of looking chauvinist by just saying we spent probably a bigger percentage of the revenue on the women than the percentage that we spent on the men. Now, I have no idea whether that's true or not. I don't know how they determined